Hello everyone and welcome to today's demo lesson, which is about academic task 1 and specifically bar charts. There was a group member who requested a specific type of bar chart there last maybe Thursday or Friday, and I had actually already started making this lesson, so there wasn't an opportunity for me to respond to that request. So apologies for that. Also, I'm sure you can hear the horns beeping outside. That's just that I live off a highway in Vietnam, and they're not too shy about using the horns here, as I'm sure any of you from Vietnam are aware, or any of you who have ever visited. So that's pretty much just the soundtrack to my life that you're hearing in the background. So apologies, but there's very little I can do about that. Last time, just a few notes from the demo lesson, more so from the global feedback of the demo lesson from 2 weeks ago. One thing was that the paraphrase wasn't mostly good, but some smaller errors, and I just want to show you kind of how to approach answering this type of question. The overviews, and in particular what I wanted to look at was where the content was unbalanced between the key features. So what I mean here is like the first key feature would point out one very specific point, and then the next key feature would have to cover the entire graph. So just try to balance out between the different key features so that you're covering roughly the same amount of information. This was in reference to the details paragraphs, and some of you had too much detail and some of you had too little, so we'll have a look at that. Have a look at cohesive devices, a lack of adjectives and adverbs. This point, organising according to from biggest to smallest, that was basically what happened in the line graph and doesn't apply too much to what we're doing today. Mention the order they appear in the chart, that was more to do with last time. And mention any category that overtakes another. So again, I think that with this bar chart we're not going to be seeing these numbers 6, 7 and 8 having much influence, but these are just the notes from last time. So here's the question that we're looking at in today's demo lesson. The chart below shows the average number of viewers of a late-night British television programme from the years 2000 to 2015. And there's the chart, so basically just 3 categories. Not too much to cover, but you still have to write 150 words. Just looking at that from the start, you'll be including pretty much everything in that chart in your answer, just because there's so little covered. If you had 10 categories, you wouldn't be able to mention everything. You'd have to decide on what's most and least important, and in a chart of this size, you're going to be mentioning pretty much everything. So first, I just want to look at the paraphrase with you. So I'll just enlarge the question statement. So first, we'll just have a look at some common problems. So you don't want to add any extra information to the question statement. So extra information would be, for example, a popular late night British television program. So here you don't want the word popular in your paraphrase because that's extra information you weren't given. So avoid any extra or adding to the question statement. Also, you want to avoid removing from the question statement. So any information that we have here should also be in your paraphrase. So for example, if you said that the chart shows the average number of viewers of a British television program and you've removed a late night, again, you've not paraphrased accurately, so avoid adding to, avoid removing, and avoid changing anything. So for example, if you change the British television program to an English television program, here British and English isn't exactly the same, you've changed some of the meaning, and again, you're not going to have an accurate paraphrase. So avoid adding, removing, or changing anything from what was in the original question statement. Sometimes people forget to remove the word below, so this will be in the question statement, but should never be in your paraphrase because the chart isn't below, so you don't want it, you don't need to take that, you don't need to paraphrase that part. Some people tend, as far as I can tell, some people are trying to translate one word at a time. And this just leads to kind of complications with grammar and makes it that you're using 2 words that are synonyms of themselves but don't actually belong together. And it just gets a bit trickier, it gets a bit messed up. So you want to be thinking about chunks of words rather than individual words when you're paraphrasing. Trying to change every word, you don't need to do this. If you have some of the words in your paraphrase, that's better than having some words wrong. So don't kill yourself. And I think this kind of comes from people are just freaking out when they see a word that they don't know any synonyms for. It's fine. If you don't know, that's fine. Don't panic. Just take the word from the question. If you can avoid it, don't do it. But if you need to do it, just take the word. Don't let this worry you. Don't let this concern you. And of course, this is also beneficial when it comes to time management, because honestly, I've seen so many students will sit down and spend 20 minutes trying to look at their paraphrase like a kind of a math question where they're substituting one word at a time, and nearly like they're building a wall out of Lego, where you don't want to do it like that. So we'll just look at how to take chunks and paraphrase in chunks like this. So my first chunk is the chart below shows. Like I said, we're not going to use the word below in our paraphrase. What I've come up with here is the graph illustrates, and I said it to you guys this time. Just substitute graph for chart and shows for illustrates. So if they said the graph illustrates in the question, you say the chart shows, and vice versa. You can pretty much use this 9 times out of 10. Here we have the word average, and I've seen this cause complications on several occasions in this group and on hundreds of occasions outside. I would say with the word average, even if you know a synonym like typical or the most common numbers or the whatever you have, they're not quite direct synonyms, and you're making your life easier if you just take that word from the question. It's not a big deal. I'm going to take the average. I'm going to use that in my paraphrase. Next chunk is number of viewers. Okay, and the easiest way for me to paraphrase that would say amount of people watching. Okay, that's fine. All that is just grammar related. I'll deal with this later when I'm writing the paraphrase. I'll worry about the grammar at a later point. So late night British television program. So there's a bit more involved in this. So what I've done with this one is I say a TV show from Britain which was aired at night. So I kind of gone a bit of a loop with this one, but I still have all my information, so I'm not adding to, I'm not taking from, and I'm not changing. And the last one then from the years 2000 to 2015, and I'm just going to say for 15 years starting in 2000. So I've got pretty much everything I need there, and I'll just lump it all together into one sentence. So I've got the graph illustrates the average amount of people watching a TV show from Britain which was aired at night for 15 years starting in 2000. So I mean, this is kind of what you would be doing. A lot of this would be in your mind. You might want to make notes of the different actual pieces, like when you're planning, you might want to note what language you will use. But a lot of this will just be in your head. So I just wanted to go through it piece by piece just to show you kind of the thought process behind paraphrasing. So that's my paraphrase. I'm happy with that. I'm going to use that for the question. Okay. So in the overview, I've drawn in the lines in advance, and I don't have quite as steady a hand as Chris, so I decided to cheat a little bit and get it done before making the video. So basically, we're looking at red, and it's going down. I think there's not much more to say about that for now. Yellow's going up, and green is going up, down, and down. So we'll just call that fluctuating. Now, really, I would encourage you when you're doing the IELTS test or any of your IELTS preparation, would just make little notes, little annotations on the actual question sheet. And what can be really, really helpful and make it much easier to look at is just have a little up arrow next to the data that you're referring to, and then if you draw arrows next to the categories, it can be very easy to just group them then with like, okay, there's 4 going down or 3 going up, and just use the notes and use the little arrows and like the lines that I've drawn here to help you to categorize and help you to find your key features. So drawing and making notes on the question sheet can be very, very useful when you're trying to figure out what your overview is going to be. All right, so what I've come up with here is my groupings. Now, we were talking earlier about having unbalanced groupings. So like in my first key feature and my second key feature, I want to have about the same amount of information. And here we only have 3 categories. So, I mean, I could divide it in half and have 1.5 and 1.5, but that's making things complicated. It's going to be difficult for the reader to follow. So what I'm looking at here is that the red and the yellow are very straightforward. So it's going to be, I have less to say about the red and the yellow one. Whereas green, with the up, down, down, there's a bit more happening here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put red and yellow together as my first key feature, just because there's less to say. And then I'll give the second key feature to the green information, the one about England. So then I'm just going to say what actually happened. So again, this would be more in the planning process, and a lot of this would be what's happening in your head or how you're thinking about it. So you're not going to be writing out each of these different things, but this is more my thought process while I was looking at this question. So red decreased, yellow increased, and green fluctuated. Okay, so that's pretty basic, very simplistic way of looking at it, but that's essentially what's happening. So let's just make it nice and simple at the beginning. Then you're going to want to give full descriptions. So if I went and wrote down red decreased, yellow increased, and green fluctuated, I'm pretty much looking at a very, very low score. So that's just to give me an idea. So for the red, I would say the number of viewers of this TV show in Ireland decreased throughout the time period shown. For the yellow, I turned this orange. I know that's not yellow, but when I actually use yellow and with the white background, you can barely see it. So we're going to pretend that orange is yellow for the next few slides here. The number of viewers of this TV show increased in Scotland throughout the time period shown, and the green one was the number of viewers of this TV show in England fluctuated throughout the time period shown. So that's essentially, if we were to describe them individually, that's what we would say. And this is something that a student requested the last academic demo lesson, was how to put multiple pieces of information into one sentence. Now, what I'm going to show you isn't going to blow your mind, but I think at the most basic level, what you're looking at is something like putting an and, putting a but in there. Now, these are very, very basic, and we'll look at how to make them more worthy of using in your essay, I suppose, later on. But at the most basic structure, I'm just going to have the number of viewers of this TV show in Ireland decreased throughout the time period shown, and this is what happened in Scotland, but this is what happened in England. So I'm using and here because of the simplicity, and the but is to show that it was more complex for England. Okay, and of course my repetition, this sentence just looks not nonsensical, but kind of overcomplicated, and it's difficult to follow because of the amount of repetition. So I've underlined all the bits that have already been mentioned. This one in particular, the number of viewers of this TV show. Now, I've already explained that the chart is about a TV show in my paraphrase, so I don't need to say that again. And then everything else is just repetition from within the overview. So I'm going to remove all that, and then I'm left with the number of viewers in Ireland decreased throughout the time period shown and increased in Scotland, but in England this figure fluctuated. Okay, so I'll just take that over, and we're going to look at the cohesive devices just to make it more suitable for our academic essay. So I'm basically looking at the words and the word but. So what I've come up with is the number of viewers in Ireland decreased throughout the time period shown while they increased in Scotland, whereas in England this figure fluctuated. Now, this is essentially correct, but like I was saying last week, adjectives and adverbs are very useful in that they make it easier for the reader to understand or imagine what the chart looks like, but also it's giving you a very easy way to show off your range of vocabulary. And with adjectives and adverbs, you should know several ways of saying the same thing, whereas knowing the adjective form of a word and the adverb form of the same word. So what I've used here is I've just thrown in significantly, steadily, and wildly. So it's got extra information, it's easier for the reader, and I've shown my range of vocabulary. But when I was looking at this sentence, then my issue is that the variety of structures is very, very similar, and that's not a great way of showing off my grammar. So in Ireland, Ireland increased significantly, they increased steadily in Scotland, and in England this figure fluctuated wildly. So we have like verb, adverb, verb, adverb, verb, adverb. That's not really showing what I'm capable of. So I just decided to change the last one, and I've got whereas in England there were wild fluctuations. So I've taken fluctuated and used the noun form, and then I'll just use the adjective with that. So fluctuated wildly becomes there were wild fluctuations. Right. So I'm pretty happy with that as my overview. I'm going to leave that as it is, and then I will move on to my details paragraphs. So we already decided on the groupings. My paragraph 3 is going to be about my first key feature, my paragraph 4 is going to be about my second key feature, and I think this also helps with the coherence and cohesion in that what you've done within the overview is reflected on the details paragraphs, and everything is very logically organized, and just it's very easy to follow when things are appearing in the same order over and over again. Things to remember are accuracy, so this is to do with the figures that you're using. Now if you want to say it looks like 5,000 on the chart, but you're not sure if it's exactly above or below, it's not clear, you're going to say about 5,000. So using these words about, approximately, roughly, you're improving your accuracy. And then there are other occasions where people actually just write down the wrong figure, and that, I mean, you could really, just one wrong figure could really have a big hit on your final score. So just be careful that you're double checking the figures as you're taking them from the chart. Adverbs and adjectives. So again, you're going to try to use more adjectives and adverbs in this particular essay, the essay that I'm giving you to do today. But again, not just accuracy, but also variety. So you don't want to just use the same ones that you used in the overview. Hopefully you will be aware of enough, you'll have a wide enough vocabulary that you won't have to use the same ones over and over again. So that's what I mean by variety there. And then you want to include more than one piece of data per sentence. If you just have one figure for 1 year for one category in a sentence, you're probably going to end up with details paragraphs that are longer than necessary. And really, with limited time, you already had to go through all this thought process that I went through with you here. You got to write it, you got to do your error correction, and then you got to jump over and do your task 2. So time management is going to, this adding more than one piece of data per sentence will tie back into your time management and will help you to complete both essays and give you time for error correction and everything else. Okay. That's pretty much everything I want to go through with you guys today. This is your question, and just write up your essay. Hopefully you've taken something from the demo lesson today that you can use within your essay. So just write up your essay. If you guys are just at the start of your preparation, take your time with it, use a thesaurus, look up the different adjectives and adverbs. If you are closer to your exam date, then I would expect that you're going to turn, don't be relying on thesauruses or dictionaries, just use exactly what you have in your head, use your time, use your clock, time yourself for your 20 minutes, and also write it by hand before you type it up into Facebook, because you really want to create as close to a real experience as possible if you're coming up to your exam date. Okay, that's everything for now, so I'll be back with you guys tomorrow for the global feedback. Okay, thank you all.